industry experts. I, Rashmi Sanghani, Chief Operating Officer at SKS Enterprises, is here with a very interesting topic that is sure going to keep you glued to this episode. Let me ask you one question. Are you in a business that has lots of historical data, real-time data, traditional or modern form of receiving data? Have you ever tried to make sense of the data available in hand? I'm sure you must have. Any organization, big or small, does try to use the data in hand to understand the pattern of their clients or customers and make informed decisions. So, how can this data be used in the current pandemic situation? Can it be used to our benefit? Our speaker today, Mr. Sandeep Malu, is the perfect person to hear it out to. Mr. Sandeep heads the analytics and hiring teams at Graminar. On the analytics team, Sandeep drives initiative to use relevant analytics tools and techniques that deliver business impacting insights. He is here today to help us understand how data analytics is helping fight the effect of COVID-19 on organizations and also how is it going to be important going forward in making the right business decisions. Hello Sandeep, a big welcome to you from me and my viewers.
Thank you, Rashmi. I'm happy to be here and look forward to the conversation today.
Thanks, Sandeep. So, Sandeep, you serve as a Senior Vice President in Graminar. We would first like to know your journey in this company.
Sure. I had joined Graminar 3 years ago. I had joined the product development team at Graminar. And our primary focus at that point in time was on our IP product offering called Gramex. It's a data science framework used to build rapid applications which meet enterprise needs. So the platform acted as the enabler for Graminar as an organization to offer custom solutions for our enterprise customers. And the development journey has a typical pattern to it. And any pattern that is repetitive and useful for our different customers, we identified those, componentized those offerings, and made them part of the Gramex framework, which anywhere reduces 35 to 50% of the development efforts for a new application when you compare it against building it ground up. So that's been my first project at Graminar. A year into that, as an we were seeing a rapid growth in how we were scaling different engagements across consulting, design consultation, and analytics engagements. That led to have a focus from a leadership team on the hiring practice. That's when I took an additional portfolio of talent acquisition as a practice that I would be running in. And for the last 2 years, we have scaled from a little over 70 people today to we are at 190 people strong globally. So we had to work out newer ways of attracting talent, newer ways of recruiting from campuses. So that's been the second role I had played at Graminar. And starting this year, I took on the responsibility of head of analytics. As a practice, we have 20 plus people globally who are a mixture of statisticians, modelers, as well as number crunchers. And this is a new role I'm playing in. And in this role, my primary responsibility is how do we come up with the best-in-class approaches to apply the right analytics techniques, generate the insights from data, and then hand it off to the second team in the organization that narrates them as good, engaging data stories for customers. So that's, in a nutshell, my journey in Graminar.
Oh, how wonderful, Sandeep. Sandeep, as per my study on Graminar, I read that Graminar is a design-led data science consulting firm that represents data insights. So would you like to share in detail what design-led data science mean?
And if you look at Graminar, insights as stories is our tagline. What we see in the market is data science as a technique and available has been around from 70s. It's not a new science, but the prevalence of availability of data and ability to capture the data at low cost is what moves the needle. And for the last 15, 20 years, when investments in big ERP systems in enterprise, BI tools like Tableau, Power BI, ClickSense investments were made by different organizations, the primary disconnect was there was one level of productivity gains that were achieved. Post that, the utility of a BI tool is dependent on the user who is using the tool. So it becomes a constraint of you have a specific set of charts that you have to pull together, and you have a set of business context that has to be funneled into what the tool allows you to do. So as an organization, what we have seen in the last 10 years, we are a 10-year-old organization, and what we have noticed is no two businesses run the same way. So forcing a business to fit into a context of a tool has always limited outputs. So there is a lot of resistance on the utility of it. There is enough memes about this where organizations have thousands of reports to look into, but there is no information on what to do and what to act upon. So you are provided with a lot of information and reports, but they don't translate into actions that the end users can take. And that's the narrow lane, swim lane that we have picked ourselves as an organization. When we say design-led consumption-focused solutions, we are referring to we taking our toolkit of understanding of UI UX from a design standpoint and data consulting, working with our business users to take them through a four-step journey, working with them to identify the business problem which they are trying to work upon, apply the standard consulting practices to identify which is the best problem to solve for in their context, and ensure you don't spend time on something cool or not resulting in a KPI or a business goal. Then taking that business problem, identifying that business problem and mapping it back to a data problem. That's where the skill of funnelizing and identifying which of the goals that you have. If I say I want to forecast my sales for the next 2 years, and you're an organization that just started selling in 6 months, it's highly unrealistic to kind of go ahead and solve those problems. Or if you're trying to do a disruption, like COVID is a very classic case. All the models that were built for the last 10, 20 years on your data and seasonality, it's out of the book because there is no such event like this that ever happened. So all your modeling goes for a toss. So when we talk about taking the data problem and bringing back a data answer from it, this is where your toolings for statistics, analytics, machine learning, deep learning, depending on toolkit, come in. Once you have a data answer, typical statistic answers are like your beta is this much, your area under the curve is this much, which are very cool sounding, but for a end user who has to act upon that information, it's not helpful for them. So we again bring in the concept of design thinking, which enables, if this is the forecast for your price hike and there is a possibility that you can go up or down with this range, how do you explain that information for someone to easily understand? If I have the business context, that output should be easy for me to consume and act upon. So that's what we mean by design-led consumption-focused solution building.
Sandeep, as you said, not every businesses know how to deal with this data. So, to explain to our viewers, considering that not everybody might know what data analysis is, could you share some light on what you mean? What do you mean by data here? What do you mean by data analytics here?
Okay, sure. So, if you start with what does data mean? Any electronic information that you can capture in your business. If we talk about you performing a transaction, you offering a product for sale, or you ordering a shipping service, each of these translates to generation of data. If it's you making a sale, you have a product, you have its price, its category, its different specifications. Each of these information gets captured. If you're a customer, you have a bunch of details about what the customer is: address, telephone number, where do they stay, their preferences, their likes, their past purchase, their inactivity. Each of these is data. So any digital form in which you can capture any information can be considered as data, and the format has to be digital. That's the only constraint. The nature of the information could be as numbers, as text, as images, as sound, as video. That doesn't matter. All of it is considered as data, as long as it can be digitally identified, tagged, and touched. So that's what data is, and we are swarming with data nowadays. There is a classic age-old example about the Apollo mission. When it flew to moon, the processor which was running on it could process little over 50 MB of data was what it was at that time. Today, the cheapest feature phone in which we have on the market can process much more than that at a drop of a hat. So that's the kind of scale. Or to give a different context, if you go to AWS today, and if I want to if I want to take a virtual machine using my credit card, I can get a virtual machine that can almost give me a terabyte of RAM if I want to. When we were growing up, the scale of RAM usage was like 500 MB, 1 GB, slow, that was scale. But now you can access a terabyte without having to worry about things. So that's where the volume of data comes in. So today we have enough data about everything. If you are willing to pay for it, you can get a lot more volume of data that you can capture. Now the struggle every business would have is, what do I do with this information? Your ability to take that information and understand what is that the data is conveying, number one, and whether whatever information is being derived, is it beneficial for my business or for my business objective or KPI? That's where the data analysis comes into picture. So there are different techniques about how data analysis can be performed. There are simple analytic methods like simple using Excel based, say, sorting, averaging, or mean, median, mode. That's the basic ones we start with. Then you move on to advanced analytics and you start applying different feature functions, like you do averages, you do cumulative grades, scaling. Each of these again is in Excel. Then the more advanced ones where you have the volume of data starts increasing, that's when you start using more statistical tools like advanced analytics, machine learning modeling. And when you're talking about large scale data, when essentially uh, let's take an example of let's say the UPI, which is a prominent one in India right now for payments. On average, the volume of UPI transactions in the country today is little over 10 plus crores of transactions on a daily basis. That transaction generates little over 20 GB of data. Now, when you have that much volume of data and NPCI wants to optimize few things, for them, the ability to actually look into the data and understand what needs to be done. If are there any failure transactions, is the failure of transactions more prominent with this bank versus this bank or this kind of region? Each of those is a slicing of information that you can do. So depending on what you are responsible for an organization, your need for data analysis changes drastically. If I'm into shipping, I'm only concerned about once a shipping label is generated, how soon can I get that shipping to a delivered address, whether what is inside the box, what is the value I'm generating, whether the box is only partially full versus fully full, it doesn't matter. That's somebody else's KPI in the organization. So each function of the organization has different goals. So what kind of information you want from the data, that's how the data analysis is tailor made to them. This is how you would look at data analysis, as being unique to what is it you want to identify or solve for. There is no generic one size fits all here. What can be done through simple Excel uh, should be done in Excel, versus saying that I want to use only ML, so I won't use Excel. That kind of distinction is what differentiates bulk of data analysis today in the market.
So this means that whether knowingly or unknowingly, every business man or any person related to data would have done some kind of analysis uh, in their businesses.
Absolutely. Everyone is intuitively tuned for data analysis. It's the confidence level and it's with the intent of how much you want to say that it's based on analysis versus my gut feel. If you ask someone who are Steve Jobs is known to be person who works with gut feel. That's the image that we carry. But there are enough biographical explanations that talk about how he pushes for insights about why something is relevant and why you should incorporate this versus that. Or historically, Ford, when he talks about I can give people any choice of colors as long as it's black. Each of this is backed by some intuition and some data. So I would say everyone does it.
Right. So I think this is why our viewers today are going to be most interested in this topic, because they all have done data analysis at some point of time. But
Right.
today we have some more clarity on how this data analysis is going to help in this particular situation, that is the COVID-19 situation. So moving ahead, I would like to know your thoughts on current pandemic and how data is helping combat COVID-19.
Uh, Great question. And I would start off with the reality check that all data that we can look at it as pre-corona and post-corona. That's a clear distinction that we have to be realistic about. All the data that you have collected in any of your business functions till date is mute because none of your business thinking has factored in a situation where 9 billion people are sitting at home, which is unheard of. Every business you talk about is impacted in some shape or form, some more, some less. So there's a statistic that was put out by BCG. It talks about what is the fragility of industries, and it talks about the expected shock that each of these industries will get by lack of demand. And there are a set of businesses that are most affected by these things like durables and apparels, convenience shopping, hotels, travel industry. These are the ones that face the most risk of shock from corona uh, pandemic. And then on the other spectrum, you have industries that are still going strong in terms of their place in the pandemic, like healthcare services or pharmaceutical companies and capital goods companies, even material supply companies. Each of them has their own sweet spot in terms of how they're affected. And then there are few companies categories like say utilities. Utilities have seen a drop in demand, but they are essential for survival of human race in terms of the basic necessity needs. So they would not they would see drop in demand, but their long term sustainability is still intact compared to say TIU travel agency out of Germany, global major, who's it's cutting little over 8,000 people because of the impact. So the data availability of data has impacted different industries in different ways. Now if you look back and see how is data helping people, there is one metrics that we have seen bulk of our customers use it at length is about the ability to understand the demand versus supply gap of their offering in the market today. How do you simulate demand of your offerings when there is so many unknowns in the market? You had about how people would spend or purchase, it's out of the window. So with the data that is currently available, the kind of information that can be done is more a rule-based decision making, which you would say, if this happens, I would factor in for the next activity. Unlike earlier cases where you would do forecasting of what the common examples we talk about is fashion trends. If something is picking up, you would order more of those products so that when more people buy it, you would have more of them shipped. But today, if you look at as a category entirely, apparel category is just stuck. It can't move. So for someone who's on the apparel business, which is impacted, data for them is about whether whether people would be able to get back to the normal routine life faster. So that is element that they can consider in. Or for someone who's in say a CPG company, where you're looking at whether the purchasing power of people is going to be better or worse. And a proxy that you could use is data in terms of what is the economic package or stimulus being offered by governments. Would that be big bang, say like the 10% of the GDP that was announced in India and little 3 trillion in the US? So each of those data play a different role than earlier. Earlier, a company would not even care about what the government is doing in terms of offering. But now that data becomes essential because unless that is confidence is there, we will not be in a position to make a case for how my business would perform. So this is how we see data having in the enterprise space. When it comes to the healthcare and governments acting during the pandemic, even here, the ability to identify that information, for example, epidemiological data about patients, number of patients getting tested positive, their quarantine and the symptoms, that's one volume of data that gets collected. And that helps governments to plan for it. Similarly, if you talk about how do you prep for containment or risk identifying of risk zones for people to be identified, contained, and making medical facilities available for them in terms of projecting. Do I have to plan for a 1,000-bed hospital, or do I have to open up an entire stadium and put in 2,000 beds? Each of those is again a data point which district administrators would have to struggle with. So this is how I see ability to have the data playing out in different ways, both for enterprise as well as for government.
So, do you believe that India had, as a country, had that ability to play around with this data in this situation? Did they act fast, and was this data helpful for the country in the
Uh,
initial days of this pandemic?
that would be a very tough question to answer. I say that primarily because we are still in the crisis. We don't know whether this has played out or not. So a conclusion like that, I think, is a little premature, even with data. What I can definitely talk about is if you see at the pace at which the governments have acted and the ground volunteers have come up to start putting in systems for tracking, and the speed at which application like app like Arogya Setu was rolled out and 10 crore people opting into it, that shows the strength of what can be achieved with data. So I would definitely give government call a shout out that their ability to roll out something like that during a pandemic, and whether they were fast enough, that would be a stretch question, at least for my knowledge, because reporting has been consistent. The action of containment has been reasonably okay. I think the data that they may have relied upon is the number of cases reporting in the country versus what is happening overseas. So each of these, I would say, has its own the ways it has played out.
So, Sandeep, as the world braces itself with the impact of COVID-19 outbreak, do you see the effect? How do you see the effect of the same on the global big data analytics industry? We would also like to know more from you about big data analytics and its impact on the through COVID-19.
Sure. So the way I look at the impact of big data, I primarily look at the pandemic playing out in three phases for everyone. One, you have a survival phase, which is essentially how do you survive the current phase of the pandemic. I would look at this as a three-phase exercise. Step one is survival, where you are essentially acting to stay afloat and not survive in the business cycle. So at this point, you're essentially looking at how do you contain your costs, what are the things that you have absolutely need to do, and what are things that can be deferred. So this is how one place where data can play a crucial role. The second stage is your stabilization phase, where now you know that you have come out of the rock bottom and you see potential uptick, and you are in a place where you think you are stable. You're not bleeding anymore. You're containing your costs and you're able to operate and you have restarted your operations. And then the third phase would be sustenance. In this phase, you're essentially looking at how do I go ahead and plan for the next wave of growth. This is where you strategize on how do I scale. I not just be an also ran, but how do I outsmart the competition and do better than them. So this is how I look at the three stages of transition through the pandemic. Now, in each of these phases, big data analytics can actually enable you and your organization and the function in a much more profound way. Because with big data, the challenge always has been if you ask open-ended questions and apply the tooling, the answers are always not so impressive. But when you have a clear cut path like this, saying that at this point I'm only looking at survival. So if I'm a supply chain company, how do I ensure I identify the exact number of warehouses that I have to open, and what shifts do I do? Big data can actually crunch through numbers and say, based on this drop in demand, this is where you are. So make sure you only act on these warehouses versus not opening the rest. So you get into the survival mode much faster with data being available. A similar example would be, let's say you're a insurance payment provider and you are on the hook for collections. If you have to prioritize who are the patients do I call for to make recoveries first so that I can stay afloat, you have a long list of patients to run through right now who are potentially on the list. So how do I optimize, and who do I go behind who has a maximum chance of recovery? Things like that is what are some of the use cases that can come into play. Or if you're a pharma manufacturer, what is the next step of or the quantity of drug I need to manufacture, keeping in mind the demand, so that I survive. So that's the kind of use cases that you can actually look at from a survival standpoint. If you move to the next step, a logical step, which is stabilize, here is where I'll start thinking about within my operations, what else do I do to improve efficiencies again? Because the business have to be efficient about how they perform. So there is an example you look at of the say 10 products I have. What is a mix of products that I manufacture between these 10 so that I get the most profit at the end of it, at the same time meeting the demand? For example, you're in a chips manufacturer or a biscuit manufacturer. You have a product line that is basic goods and higher price premium products. How do you maintain the mix between them so that, let's say I need to meet a government regulation which says you can only manufacture essential products? So how do you define what is essential and how do you distribute this load? Each of these could give you more strength when you are applying big data analytics on top of the use cases. So the use case is much more granular. At the same time, you are in a position to drive immediate business results. And when it comes to third stage of once you're stabilized and you're strategizing to improve your business, big data has always played a key role in how do you outsmart the business and come up with newer ways of targeting. So those are the ways I see big data playing a role. I don't see a letdown in how big the importance of big data would be because of the pandemic. I only see the influence of big data increasing. So the role of the chief data officer that was around in the last 5-6 years, what we're seeing, not just with our clients as well as global clients, when we follow Gartner research and other research papers, what we notice is the CDOs have been tasked with driving transformational initiatives during the pandemic. Earlier, they were only put aside to implement a decision that was made through IT. Now, the role has transformed to such a bigger role. That means when it percolates down the business functions, individual data science teams who are either at a COE level or individual functions, they have a greater responsibility now to demonstrate the value, which means the tooling, everything has a larger impact. That's my view on how the big data analytics would shape up because of the pandemic globally.
You mentioned that big data has always helped to bring out smarter decisions in businesses.
Right.
Can you share one or two examples with us as to how big data has helped in bringing about better results?
Sure. Let me take an example of a inventory management process. This is for one of our clients we had done for airline cargo company. The service provider would when a plane lands with cargo, the airline gives you a free time of 90 minutes for the cargo to remain on the airport premises, and anything longer than 90 minutes, you have to pay the airport demurrage fee for retaining the inventory in the airport. So one of the providers we were working with, though their planned capacity of people, forklifts, machinery, and shifts was on paper more than what their actual business volume was, but they were ending up paying for demurrage fee in the airport. When we applied big data analytics and looked at trends and regression, we done multiple models run, and what we identified was we were able to narrow down specifically identify which day of the week, which product category, which shift it was coming in, and why that particular shift and associated products were causing delays. So that's the level at which big data can crunch these numbers and give a historic perspective. That's one example. So by ensuring that on that particular shift, say Friday morning for ZDH product category, when shipments is less than 20%, those are the boxes that get left out back because they are small and they get lost. And till the next cycle comes in, which is after 4 or 5 hours, the box is in the airport, so airport charges you for it. Things like these, which are minute, they get challenged. Or that's on the this side. If you're talking about, let's say, look at if you're a finance function in a manufacturing company, and you have a days of recovery for an invoice out. Some of the patterns we were able to find with big data was, if there is a 20 to 30% deviation in order volume from a client in the last 2 billing cycles, the chances of the delay in invoices jumps by 50%. So you can think about who are the customers who are ordering more or less, and they are potentially likely to delay the payments. This kind of insights is what big data can funnel faster to you, versus you actually waiting till the 90th day and seeing that they didn't make payments and then again start calling it. Your total time to recovery is much longer. But with big data insights, even before that action happens, using historic trends, you can pattern and pick and point out. So this is how the influence of big data can vary from enterprise commercial needs to conservation and multiple other areas.
So I would like to know what includes in the big data. What do you mean by big data? So there's data analytics and big data analytics, which are different. So what includes in big data analysis?
Good question. So the nomenclature of big data, there is no marker which says that any data that is more than X amount of MB or X amount of GB is big data. There is no such marker in place. The simplistic way I would put it is, if you can analyze any data in Excel, it is not big data. Again, I'm dumbing it down to a level which is easier to relate. But if you can perform a transaction or analysis in Excel, you're good off. You don't need heavy tools. But in enterprise, when the volume of data, like the NPCI case I mentioned earlier, which generates 10 crore records and you have 20 GB of data, that volume of data cannot be fit into Excel to do anything. And that volume of data quantifies as big data. So the toolings that you need to perform any transactions or analysis on that data can be safely put in the big data analytics bucket. So the only difference between data analysis that we normally call off and the big data analysis, the distinction is that the tooling required to access the data, that's the only distinction is there. In terms of the actual technique that is being applied, there is no difference. The same techniques. If you're applying modeling forecasting, it's the same one, be it in Excel or in Hadoop cluster, which has large volumes of data, 300 plus GB of data. It's still the same. The distinction is the tool that you need, and it's driven by the volume of data you're trying to access at the same time.
Great. I think that gives us a great understanding of what big data analysis means.
Mhm.
So moving ahead, organizations have good amount of data these days in hand, whether collected organically or conventionally. So
Right.
how does COVID-19 make the business case for more analytics?
From a COVID analytics standpoint, you are essentially looking at, depending on the stage of the journey that you are in, be it survival, stabilize, and strategize. One piece of information that is very evident is every organization has to relook at how it is spending money, and which means essentially redoing your priorities. And the way you redo your priorities is if you can establish what is the ROI I can get out of an initiative. And that's where analytics comes into play. You applying different forecasting techniques or modelings to understand which of the tools can play. Let me give an example. Most of the e-retailers in the US, the volumes that they are seeing on their websites today is almost on par with the Cyber Monday online volumes. Earlier, organizations used to prepare for Cyber Monday in terms of preparedness, computational power being put aside, the number of people was a once a year activity. Starting the end of November to Christmas is when the period most of the businesses used to ramp up planning. But now your entire year is like that in terms of volumes. So your planning about how you should be preparing for operations is entirely different. So operations team would look at, I need to expand my capacity to support that kind of order volume. Now, the same order volume, if you notice what the change is that during earlier shopping seasons, let's say Cyber Monday deals, bulk of your products were high priced, like electronics, high priced, high margin, low human touch. And now the transaction volumes are increased, but the items that people are ordering is essentials, groceries, toilet paper, toothpaste. These are low price, low volume, high human touch. So one portion of your business is happy because their function is seeing increased volume in order, but a different function is seeing a drop in profitability or the KPIs in their function. So you have to work out and look at, because of the pandemic, my existing metrics in each of these functions has entirely gone for a toss. It's no longer valid. Organizationally, there is a different goal I have, but individual functions have suddenly the scope has shifted. So this is how I see data playing a role in aligning with the new reality of what the business cycle is all about. If you talk about forecasting, for example, if a manufacturer has to think about what is the demand for me for the next X amount of time, they will have to start working at least 6 months behind, saying that this is the kind of forecast that I can get. Or for a car manufacturer to say, if I have to think about how many cars I can sell, so that I can give a forecast to my factory to manufacture this. Now think about it. April had zero car sales in India. First in the history that there were no car sales at all. And Maruti had made a very good, Maruti, even Mahindra had made a good push of quickly adapting to online selling of vehicles. That's a rapid shift to a digital transformation. And Maruti was able to generate 4,000 plus orders during the lockdown through their digital only platform. Conventionally, buying a car has been a touch and feel. You go into the showroom, you drive and all. But the change in patterns, how do you account for those behaviors? So I would see each industries that are versed it, like automobile and manufacturing and same consumer goods, each of them going through this transition. One more good indicator of COVID is because I run the TA function too, so I'm switching gears and talking about this. Most of the hiring has come to nauseated pause. The market leader Google, in terms of Google, which sets the industry benchmark on hiring worldwide from tech, they have put a pause on active hiring, and they have talked about not going as aggressive in terms of hiring, but only looking at strategic needs. So an organization which is known for crunching numbers also is forced to relook at their own functions because of this. And they talk about how, because of reduced spending, reduced ad revenues, reduced inflows for them, so reduced forecast planning, each of these across industries, not just industries that are the most affected by pandemic, but even industries that have survived will have to relook at how they use data in their business functions.
Right. So, in continuation to what you said, Sandeep, I would like to ask you that since Graminer is a product company totally into data analytics,
Mhm.
so you would have modeled various economic scenarios coming out of this pandemic.
Right.
So, what was the best case and the worst case that came out? Like, as you said, the hiring had to be freezed due to various reasons.
Mhm.
So, did you forecast any more such scenarios?
In terms of as an organization, we looked at how would our business play out, looking at how our end clients who we are working with and the public information that is available on how they have given forecasts. We had done that exercise of looking at our pharma customers in pharmaceuticals, BFSI, and high tech and consulting, each of these industries. We looked at how they are reacting in terms of their business outlook. And we had models done inward to see how it would impact us from a function standpoint. We work with a couple of semiconductor manufacturing clients, so their business pipeline has been strong versus customers who are in the BFSI segment, where your ability to rotate money in this economy has restrictions, which means their product offerings would not take a similar upward trajectory. So we had considered those signals coming in from public market conditions and incorporated back, and we had done forecasts varying from saying at the same revenue as last year, drop in revenue X percentage from last year, and then making most optimistic outcome was be increasing our revenue top line. So each of these scenarios is what we gamed and looked at how would the demand for capacity play out, what is the need of more hands to be added to the team. This is how we had done simulations. That's an internal exercise that we had done. When we look at external interactions that we had done, we had worked with our clients in terms of looking at supply chain clients, primarily doing optimizations of routing of trucks. From a given restrictions that are placed across countries and regions, your inability to shift loads from one region to the next, the kind of restrictions you have on travel, essential goods. We have done simulations with them, considering scenarios that there is entire no movement of goods from region to region, running those simulations, and also looked at what kind of stimulus is being offered to different users. Is it more effective in terms of the purchasing power? How soon will it come back to the country? We work for some of the clients in the US where we had factored in simulations which look at the plan from government of ensuring unemployment insurance that is being paid with more certainty. So how does having $1,000 per month per family for keeping them, ensuring they have basic necessities, how does that play out with the impact on different industries? We can knock out some of the places like tourism. Expecting tourism to bounce back so soon is a little wishful thinking, but in terms of their purchasing parity for essential goods. So those are the kind of simulations we had run to aid our customers in their decision making. We summarize this as business resilience planning. All the simulation preparedness. That's the term that we would refer to that exercise as.
Like, COVID-19 has been disruptive catalyst across every industry.
Right.
So, which industry do you think was most benefited by the use of data analysis tools?
I would say public sector. The governments are the most ones benefited. I say this not from a commercial intent standpoint, but for a way the pandemic has spread across worldwide, the ability of governments to actually tap into the data and make decisions at such a faster clip to contain it. Governments have been the best to benefit from all the access to the big data. If you look at how, for example, governments in say Hong Kong, when you land in from and how they are being structurally being put through different testings, quarantine, and the level at which the granularity at which they have been able to do. Even in India, we have a colleague of ours who they have their partner works for an airlines, overseas airlines. When they flew back to the country, they were home quarantined in Bangalore for 14 days. Right from the time they landed in the airport, they were identified, tagged home quarantine, and once they reached home, the subsequent day they had people from the local health department come in and check upon them and bring groceries for them, because you're home quarantine, you can't step out. So if a government can actually act at that level, I see them as the beneficiaries. When it comes to the enterprise and the business side, pharmaceutical companies, healthcare have put this data to much better use. That's my view. These are the companies that have benefited from access to volume of data and the information that is flowing in, and have been able to act upon and make decisions.
I think that is the need of the hour.
It is.
Acting based on the data available, I think that would be the best thing possible during this time.
True.
So India is the second biggest market for data analyst professionals, just after the US.
Correct.
Now with COVID-19 and a lot more businesses wanting to use data analytics tool, do you see the market grow further for these professionals?
The need for the data analytics skills is definitely going to increase. The way I look at it from I'm wearing the talent acquisition hat right now. I'm answering this question. The way I see it is the need has always been strong for this skill in the market, and that need will sustain. The On the supply side is where I see some of the trends changing. The ability of someone to say, I understand data science and these are the kind of courses I've done and I get into the industry, versus now, given the heightened scrutiny about value generation from every investment, the expectation from each individual who would say I am fluent in this skill would be very high. You would not have the luxury of coming in and picking up and learning things on the fly and delivering. That is the subtle change I foresee in how the data science individuals and teams would be evaluated. Even if I have investment of data science and say 20-30 people team in house in the organization, the CFO won't sit idle. He would challenge the investments because A, these skills are not cheap. They come with a higher cost. The questions would be, why do I need to fund this team if the ROI that is being generated from the team is no longer justified? So that is the kind of challenge I see with the team's likability within an organization.
This was also something that I was going to ask you next. So do you see enough qualified data analysts to meet this demand? So, what kind of skills are needed for the businesses to have these professionals? And do we have, those kind of qualified people out there to hire in our companies?
I would look at the need for a combination of skills. There is no one skill. If we have all the skills that we need in one person, that person is not going to sit idle. He would have been grabbed by someone already. So I would break it down into three different parts from a skilling standpoint. You have the data engineering skills that are essential for how do you ensure the data that is the data being captured the right way, is it being stored the right way, is it being available for access, transformation, analysis. So this is the whole skill of data engineering. That's one thread. The second thread is about the skill of applying data analytics techniques, be it analytics, advanced analytics, machine learning, or deep learning, wherever relevant. Ability to apply these modeling and techniques on data is one set of these. And within this too, there is a lot of uh, the eyeballs and attention is on deep learning off late, or that is a skill to learn because it's hot in the market or essential. Our experience has been that the bulk of the strength that is applied is advanced analytics and machine learning. People with strong skills in these two can easily scale up to the deep learning needs at a later point. But someone who only says, I know deep learning, so I'll only work on this kind of nature of skills, we see those kind of people having a little more struggle when compared to delivering value. Because the challenge to deliver value from a deep learning engagement is a lot higher. The bar is pretty high. And the third skill that we talk about is how do you translate the outputs from models to business users from an understandability standpoint. So this is a third skill. You having 10 data scientists is good, but if you can't explain to the business decision makers as to what you did and why they have to listen to what the data scientist is saying, is the third skill. So I would look at these three broad tracks of data science skills on teams. One person having all three, it would be a best case scenario, but it's a little unlikely. Bulk of the focus of the talent pool that we see in the market today is the second skill, which is modeling skill. We have many people who talk about modeling experience and modeling understanding, theoretical or practical. The number of people who want to go backwards to data engineering is a little lesser, but that's the crucial piece that differentiates whether a project gets successfully deployed in the production or just sits on a shelf once it's through a pilot. And the third piece, which is the narrating skills of data analysis translation skills, that skill is becomes essential because that skill essentially ensures the ROI that is demonstrated from the data science team. Whether it get actually realized or not is dependent on the third pillar. And even this pillar is a challenge today in the market. Whoever has a good business analytics and data analytics experience are very good at this third role, which is the data translators role. So this is how I see the market in terms of these three pillars. Uh, my thought has always been that if you look at Longpole, the ability to do data engineering and applying modeling is the toughest skill, at least in the market. So there will be greater disruptors who want to automate those processes. So they can be automated, and it's just a matter of time that these capabilities will be automated at a much faster pace. So those two skills are quickly ripe for disruption and automation. Whereas the third skill, which is the data translator skills, those are very hard to find. It's not easy to train. It's as close to a art as possible. So that is a niche skill that I would see as not easy to replicate, but the other two are easy to replicate.
I think that is a great piece of information for our data analyst professional out there. So if you want to get into good companies that use a lot of data analytics tool, then this is where you need to upskill the data translating part.
Correct.
So companies need the right tools to respond quickly, and the data analytic products available today are very powerful tools.
True.
So businesses should use them. So can you help our viewers in suggesting some of the easy to use data analytics tools out there?
The easiest and the fastest one to learn or experiment is Excel, Microsoft Excel. There has been no competitor at that entry level than Excel. This is for anyone, whether you understand programming or not. If you are a little more comfortable with programming, Python is a logical choice for you to start off with. And if you're not into both Excel and Python, but you want to only use a UI friendly interface, then BI tools like Tableau, Power BI are your next best bet. You can train on them for free, and you have public versions of that are available. And in each of these tools, when you learn them, the biggest struggle you'll have is how do you convey that you have mastered a skill in these programming tools. So you have to build a portfolio of your own work that demonstrates what you can do. So that becomes essential. And in the ecosystem itself, Python has a large ecosystem that can do varied set of data science capabilities. So those is some of the other ways, depending on your interest and skill level, you could explore more and learn more. And organizations typically want to have the flexibility to not go with a vendor. That's where the resistance from organizations to do open source app building is high. The downside for that is, though it is not locked to a vendor, you don't, unless you have an army of programmers to build those in open source and maintain it, you will not benefit from the research and the investments that is being put by, say, a Tableau or a Microsoft to build the BI tool. So it's a trade-off for each organization, depending on what you are, what is a problem that you're trying to solve, how large is your data, and how much you're willing to invest. You have a good grid of tools that are available today in the market.
Okay. So would you like to share some insight on what Grameener as a data analytics company provides to these businesses? What kind of tools do they provide, and how is it helpful to these businesses?
Sure. From a solution offering standpoint, at Grameener, we look at building custom solutions which are aligned with the existing investments in enterprise. So if an enterprise has, say, I have investments of 5,000 Tableau licenses already in place, we don't go and say you stop using Tableau, we'll bring in a new tool. The way we approach is we complement our design consulting and data consulting skills and work within the Tableau ecosystem by building components for Tableau. Similarly with Power BI. And if there is no preference for either of these, that's when we bring in our own toolkit, data science framework toolkit of Gramex, and build applications on top of Gramex. The Gramex data science framework is built on Python and 50 plus open source libraries performing different interactions. And we have customized that recipe for our need. So this is what we offer. In addition to this, we have a standard delivery framework that we have honed over a period of 10 years, which we offer to our clients as a template for how do you execute projects, how do you pick problems, how do you narrow down what is important. We do a series of advisory workshops in the beginning of our interactions that would help even the enterprise customers to think about their own business in a structured way, work with them to identify, first draft those problems, distill it down to important ones which have a good ROI, and then take that through the journey of data science application building. This is what we offer to the market today.
So I think our businesses should consider coming to vendor like Grameener. I'm sure they'll get great solutions to their business problems.
Right.
Deep, we would like to know that how big data analytics factor into the next phase of COVID-19.
The biggest benefit that I see of big data is in contact tracing. That's the next wave that has to be tamed. How do you ensure the pandemic doesn't spread outside the containment zones? So contact tracing as a practice, and big data is well enabled to actually assist, say, different administrators to make that decision of who to contain, who to reach out to, what to do. And a country like India with a 130 crore population, you going door to door and asking people doesn't work. It has to be much more intelligent, and we have seen examples of how government has used Argya Setu app is one example of data being used at scale. In addition to that, tracking people's mobile presence in different towers. That's a huge big data puzzle to solve for. When people land in a country, or when there is a person who has traveled to different cities using their mobile phone signal and the tower in which they were, and using proximity horizons. So each of these are different ways in which I think big data will play a larger role, in addition to people self-reporting their awareness.
Right. So you spoke about data analytics being different in different kind of functions. They act differently in different functions.
Correct.
So how do you think this plays a role in the HR business function? Because HR business function is crucial and critical to every company, be it small or big. So
Correct.
how is data analytics helping in the HR business function?
HR function A, I'll talk about how Gramener is using the same in terms of how we're making use of data for HR business function. Uh, the business function's primary role is to maintain the well-being of employees and their well-being in terms of mental health as well as access. So by using analytics, we do a twice a year survey on a lot of long list of questions with all our employees, which is you don't have to disclose your name, and you can be free about expressing your opinion. So using textual NLP based analysis that we have applied on that survey data, we have been able to identify what are the more pressing needs of our employees, act upon it, so that we are able to go back the survey that happens in the next 6 months and see whether we had made an improvement on that parameter, or there is still more dissatisfaction. So that's one example of how data analytics specific to text NLP and surveys will help. Two, we have a large volume of information about employees already with us in terms of when they're joining. We have their history, education, past employee work, their we have their performance reviews over a period of time, the compensation that they have been given, the different opportunities they were exposed to. Uh, I'll give an example of a bank based out of Mumbai. We had done a attrition modeling exercise for them, keeping in mind, how do you look at, of my 20,000 plus employees across the country, I know that my attrition rate is 17%, which is okay, but it's still high. So how do I proactively identify the next set of 1,000 employees who are going to leave me in the next quarter? And can HR business partners do a proactive engagement with these employees to reduce the potential likelihood of them leaving? So if you build these, if you take all this digital information and identify patterns of what kind of customer, how do you predict whether an employee's interest towards the organization is high, medium, or low? We want to identify those people, and we were using analytics of textual based as well as digital regression models and linear regression models, multivariate analysis, different tooling techniques. What we were able to identify was, we were able to identify those granular attributes which actually influence employee decisions. If an employee has stopped using the office library and they're no longer checking out books from the library, it's an indicator that there is a change in their behavior. Or if the employee participation in the CSR activities of the organization is going down, it means they are no longer aligned with the corporate's view. So it means these are on flight risk for moving out. The other standard ones, like you got a bad appraisal, you didn't get a promotion, those are given, that people understand already. But big data analysis would essentially allow you to granular and come down and down to granular levels that are more actionable. So if you start noticing people in these behavioral patterns, the HR business partner could actually intervene in those employees to say, hey, whether that action would result in a retention is a secondary question, but you are at least giving the HR team a potential opportunity to intervene beforehand. And in the clients that we had worked on, we had seen that there was a 30 basis point reduction in attrition because of proactive engagement by HR business partners. So 30 business points is a very good number, though it translates to little over 300 people countrywide, but the 300 people are less, where you had to go into the market, screen 10,000 resumes, get to those 300 and joiners. So that's how the impact amplifies. That's one side of HR, that's employee benefits and retention. If you talk about comp and ben, how do I optimize the right mix of compensation for my employees, and how do you do market intelligence vis-a-vis competitors? I tap into sources like, say, LinkedIn, Indeed, Naukri. They give a lot of intel. Crunching those numbers and identifying in my business needs, what is the, if I increase the budget by this much, projection of my costs, how do I attract the right talent? Where do I go? Each of these is the kind of analysis that can assist. Any other business function you want me to comment upon for
No,
HR?
so I being from HR background, I did want to understand more on the HR business function. But if you would like to, if you have any particular example, or if you would like to share some insight about any particular function, then
Uh,
you can.
think about for a client, if you are managing a global organization and you have, say, 1 lakh plus servers running globally, how do you plan for a structured way of ensuring you have uptime of infrastructure all the time? You ensure there is less complaints, or you have a help desk that has 40,000 calls coming on each day, and people call in when they have a problem with the laptop, even when they have issues. How do you prioritize them so that you address the needs of the most pressing employee first, and not spend half an hour with someone who has a problem with the screen not glowing the way they would like to? So how do you intelligently route those calls and make decisions of categorization and assignment of priority so that the limited capacity you have of support executives is optimally used? So we have seen improvements in those functions as well. As an example, there are a bunch of different cases that I can and go on with the list of examples that we did, but those are some of them to name a few.
I think this will be helpful for our viewers to understand how data analysis is helping in different functions. During this situation where a lot of IT companies are working from home, so did data analytics play any role in deciding whether the work from home is working for their company or not, or whether the employees are working up to the mark? Was there any role that data analytics was able to play to define that yes, work from home is a better, is going to be the next hot trend?
One piece of thing that we as an organization are realizing is the affinity to actually work remotely has spiked through the roof. Conventional companies, even manufacturing companies, which were forced for shutdown, and the way they have been operating different functions, these are examples that I'm narrating from our own clients. We have seen examples where manufacturing units, they're realizing that 30% of their workforce does not even have to be in the office physically. So they are getting comfortable the fact of people being remote entirely. And this is one trend that I would see just blow up in terms of people being remote most of the time and occasionally meeting up. The downside for such a behavior is that the amount of real estate space, commercial real estate space that is needed would drastically get impacted over a period of time, not immediately. And that's how I see data playing a very good role in each of these business decision making. Each of, like, a company like ours has to decide, do we want to open up an office, do you want to add more capacity, versus if I let x number of people continue remotely, how much capital investments is reducing. And each of these, I see the need for capturing data is going to increase a lot more, and the need for applying more intelligent techniques and modeling on each of your business functions is going to increase. The biggest struggle we'll have is stitching these two together, and speed of execution, I think, is going to be a key differentiator for organizations who perform, survive, and grow, versus organizations that are not able to act at the speed at which other competitors are playing out.
So do you think this is going to be the next hot trend?
I would say this is going to be the need. It is no longer a trend. I think this is going to be a necessity, and it also opens up good cost-saving opportunities for organizations. That if you don't need your employees to be present and you can incentivize them to stay home and still be productive, it's a win-win. And I also see that as a long-term benefit, that even if you can get off 1/10 of the workforce to work from home, the amount of impact it can have on consumption of on pollution, for that matter, it can cause a significant difference. So I would see this as an overall positive impact for the greater community good if this can play out. But there are enough challenges to ensure there is continuity of work from home. So those have to be taken care. It can't be an easy shift. It has to be backed with reliable actions.
So this unmatched volume of data has the potential to empower decision makers as never before, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, including efforts to contain its spread and help businesses stay afloat. The need to extract, visualize, and execute this intelligence is near real time, is necessarily becoming a mission critical objective. We do not know what lies in store for us in the coming weeks and months, but we hope that this session and all the information shared by our dear speaker Sandeep will help you make better decision strategies and keep your business afloat. Thank you, Sandeep, for being a part of our webinar series.
Thank you, Rashmi. I hope our users enjoy this as much as I enjoyed. Thank you.
I'm sure